the cliff dwellings at Mesa Verde. On June 26, 1906, the Mesa Verde National Park was founded. But the history of this place reaches much farther back than that. About 1400 years ago, the ancestral Puebloan people lived here, and for 700 years they inhabited these mud and stone cliff dwellings. Eventually the dwellings were left intact but abandoned. We don't know why. But they have been preserved by this cave that they inhabit ever since. The native inhabitants, there were actually thousands of them, which is crazy for this time. There's evidence that they were farmers. They would walk water from the streams and the lower canyon all the way up to the top flat plains at the top of the canyon. Because they were farmers, unlike hunter-gatherers who have to pack light, these natives could really form a really rich culture of architecture, basket weaving, pottery, a lot of these things that were kind of hard for people who had to pack light to really form. As white settlers begin to move in closer and closer to discovering Mesa Verde, the Ute Indians were actually a blessing in disguise and begin to drive them back. Some of the few people that were allowed to come near were the Spanish, and actually in 1776, a Spanish priest rediscovered the mesa and gave it its name. But W.H. Jackson was the first person to rediscover the ruins and began to prod at them, but didn't get too far into the main ones before he was driven out by the Utes. But Ben Weatherhill, a rancher, befriended the Utes and was allowed to run his cattle in the canyons, and his sons were the one who rediscovered the caves in 1888. The city was in a sad state of repair. A lot of roofs had fallen and walls had partially crumbled, but because of this cave that covered it from rain, wind, it meant that the greater part of it remained pretty intact. The Weatherhill boys explored for their own sake, just prodding and poking at the ruins, but then they realized that these artifacts were worth thousands of dollars, and began to clear out and sell off their findings. Once word got out, a lot of visitors began to also trespass on the ruins and carried off literal tons of artifacts. Parties of workmen actually remained in the ruins all winter and wrenched the beams from the roofs for firewood. By the time the national park was founded, the ruins had been excavated, and true archaeologists found little besides crumbled buildings and careless visitors. Under leadership of the Federation of Women's Clubs and the Ute Indians who actually had a reservation on Mesa Verde, they worked with Washington to form a national park under Teddy Roosevelt. This meant now stabilization could occur. We could begin poking at the ruins in a way that wasn't destroying or harming them. We could begin learning a lot more from them. And in the beginning, they started working on repairing a lot of these walls that were about to completely collapse. In the early days, a lot of Portland cement was actually used to repair these. To date, 230 of the 600 cliff dwellings have been assessed, and currently we're working on assessing all of them to figure out the best way to repair them all in a way that works to preserve the history of the site. Frank G. Matero's article documents the condition of Mesa Verde extensively and shows the practices at the site. As you can see in these top photos, there was extensive damage before any work was done. As you can see, all these bricks just having been completely destroyed by weather or humans visiting the site. But after, it's been repaired tremendously well. And it's in a way that is, to our best knowledge, the most historically accurate way. And so today, after much reconstruction and safety improvements, the dwellings are accessible to almost everybody. Many of the walls have been rebuilt, rubble has been safely removed. In this top photo, you can see this rubble, but this was actually a well that has been covered up to allow people to really experience everything in a safe environment. And as progress continues, hopefully we'll see these dwellings become closer and closer to how they historically were meant to be experienced.